EDC back again with another knife video. This is the Tucson TS85. Very interesting little knife here. It is a little chunker, little stubby knife. And for those of you who know Tucson, Tucson is a Chinese company. They burst on the scene a couple of years ago. They've released 200 to 300-ish designs, and they number them all. So it's very confusing for us Americans that are used to naming everything, like Benchmade Griptilian, Spyderco Shaman, right? So we're used to naming everything. And We Knife Company found out that was a problem in America when they came in and started numbering everything, and then realized this isn't working. Let's go ahead and name everything. So Tucson isn't there yet. They haven't named everything. They have some, I guess, names to go along with the numbers for some of their models, but they really should be naming everything at this point. But in any event, that's a sort of a rant about Tucson. Overall, Tucson is a knife company that makes many of their knives in the budget world. They make many of their knives out of D2, out of titanium, and out of ceramic bearings. And those three things magically, under the price of $60 to $80, usually is a recipe for success because the fit and finish is good, and you're getting good steel with titanium and ceramic bearings for a really, really nice price that you will usually get in many American brands, something that is either FRN or Teflon or phosphor bronze washers, or even if you do get bearings, you're going to get the FRN or G10 or aluminum. You're not going to get titanium. So Tucson does a good job of bringing premium materials to the masses at bargain prices. So let's go ahead and talk about this knife. This is the TS85, as I said. This knife is on loan from Stud Fishing, one of my viewers. Thank you so much, Stud. I can't talk today. Thank you so much, Stud Fishing, for providing this to the channel. I really appreciate it. It's guys like you that can help this channel keep going and keep producing great content. So let's go ahead and do some size comparisons, because even though this is a little chunker of a knife, it is not that big, and you'll see what I'm talking about in just a minute. Let's go ahead and look at the Paramilitary 2, which is much larger than this knife, and the Para 3, which is probably a much better size comparison for this knife. It's a little bit bigger than the Para 3. It's sort of an in-between size between the Para 3 and the Paramilitary 2, but looks much bigger when you're just looking at it by itself. Let's go ahead and put it up against the Benchmade Griptilian. And so you can see the handles are very similar in size, but the blade is much shorter on the TS85 there. And let's go ahead and put down the Kershaw Bareknuckle, a knife with great blade to handle ratios. So you can see that both the handle and the blade are longer. There you go, lining up pivot to pivot. Right there. Let's go ahead and look at a larger knife. Let's find another stubby knife. Here we go. ZT0308. This is a much bigger knife. And just for fun and posterity, the Spyderco Meerkat. Much smaller knife. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the good and the bad of this blade, because it is an interesting knife. So, first of all, you have this Wharncliffe blade right here. It's basically like a sheep's foot Wharncliffe, and you can see where this is the foot on the sheep's foot. It's a very, very useful blade shape, very utilitarian. It's very good for cutting into things when you use downward force. Cutting into boxes, cutting into packages, cutting into anything that you use that downward force. Very, very nice for that. Also, the action on this thing is very nice because the blade is a little heavier on this. The action is just really smooth, and you really get that nice smooth feeling. And you can hear it in here, whipping. This hasn't been oiled, so it probably needs a little bit of oil, but even needing a little bit of oil, you can hear that sort of whipping out. I like that a lot. The pocket clip is milled pocket clip, plain titanium. It actually works very well. The pocket clip goes in and out of the pocket very easily. There's not too much tension on it, and the gear backspacer on the back of this is quite attractive and mimics a lot of other gear backspacers out there. This is a custom gear backspacer on a Manix, and there's a bunch of others I think I have. I didn't pull them out. But it's a very classic design that works very well, and they executed it very nicely here in titanium. This is D2, as I said. Many of their knives come in D2. From what I understand, TwoSun, even though they produce a lot of D2, does heat treat it, it gets the Rockwell accurate. I know a lot of companies, and especially Chinese companies, on the cheaper end, have had problems telling the truth when it comes to, you know, what they're doing, whether Rockwelling their steels at, or whether it's actually D2. From what I understand, TwoSuns do not have that problem. On the whole, they are very good at saying if they're saying it's D2, it's D2, and if they're saying it's Rockwell nicely, it's going to be Rockwell nicely. So that's always a great thing. D2, as you guys know, is a tool steel. It is a little bit stainless. It has a little bit of chromium in it to make it a little bit stainless, but for the most part, it's a tool steel, and therefore it is prone to rust. So if you know, these will come well oiled from the factory, so they don't rust on the way to you. That being said, you need to keep them oiled so they don't rust. A pivot on here is a plain pivot. Would have liked to see them put a little bit more thought into the pivot, but overall, I don't think it takes away from the knife at all. This is just it's a plain design, but an effective design. You can't expect too much intricacy at this price point. It's a $60 price point. The fact that they can bring you a D2 and titanium ceramic bearing knife for $60 that has a big chunk of D2 like this, and it's just impressive. I gotta say the price is really impressive on this. The blade itself is a little thick behind the edge for how tall it is. It has plenty of room to go down to a finer edge, but it actually doesn't. It is a little bit thick behind the edge, which is okay. I mean, you can change the angle, sharpen it a little bit more if you like, or it's cheap enough that you could possibly do a regrind on this. Not that I would want to spend the money on it, but for the most part, this is I like the grind, and I like the blade on this. I do think it could have been ground a little thinner, and I think a full flat grind all the way down might have been better. You would have lost some of the aesthetics up here, though, especially it has these machining lines up here as well. You have some functional jimping up here for where your thumb goes, and it feels just like the jimping you would have on a hinderer for the most part. It's a little bit sharper than a hinderer. Let's go ahead and take one out so you can see. So this is the jimping on the hinderer. It feels very similar, but the hinderer is just smoother and a little bit more refined and finished than the jimping on here, the TS85. But overall, this is a really nice knife. Has T6, I believe, hardware over here, and T8 pivot. And actually, I'm gonna go check that. One moment. I just want to make sure that's not a T8, because frankly, if it is T8, I'm gonna be impressed. No, I think it is T8 over here. Okay, I'm impressed, TwoSun. You've got T8 body screws and T8 pivot. I'm definitely impressed with that. So, yeah, I mean, overall, I don't have a lot of bad things to say about this knife. I actually really like this knife a lot. At $60, I think it's a huge bargain, and I think that the knife market needs to take more notice of TwoSun overall. I definitely put this on my recommend list. I would recommend this several times over. The only caveat I will say is it's small on my hand. The ergonomics on this are, I would say the ergonomics are a 6.5 to 7 out of 10. And that mainly has to do with the fact that this is a little thin back here. But up front, it's a nice feel. So I'll go ahead and say it's a recommend with a caveat of being a little small on the back end, and on the back end being a little short. so the ergonomics are a little bit off, but for 60 bucks, all the features you get with it, great knife. Overall recommend. Thanks so much for watching. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you get all my content, and go ahead and like the video and drop a comment if you want to chime in on the knife discussion. Thanks so much.